Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled as to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
Very good morning to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Global Morning. It's a great Friday, no doubt about that. The weekend has started one way or another. Here at Global Television, we'll spend the next 1 hour discussing and looking at papers for you, 1 hour 30 minutes, I should say, and then just having to take a look at some of the big stories from the year so far. It's the first day of December, and ironically, it's the last month of the year. I mean, it's been a long time coming for many people. For instance, those who had made a series of resolutions going into 2023. And it would appear at that time like 2023 will never come to an end, but we're just 30 days away from the very end of it, quite practically. But then it's also an opportunity to take a second look at all of those resolutions, how much we have been able to accomplish them. No pressures. I mean, if you couldn't achieve some aspects of your goals, your objectives, who says you can't carry them over and continue into 2024 and where necessary, even beyond. But for us here, in the next 31 days, we're going to be looking for the most part at some of the very pivotal events, some of the very remarkable happenings in our country and beyond. We want to see how far we have come, especially again, given that President Bola Tinubu took office this year on the 29th of May. We want to see whether or not there has been progress in critical aspects of our national lives, where we have missed the mark, areas where it is necessary to make adjustments as quickly as possible. We'll do all of that. I'll be joined by my colleague, Anthony Momodu, this morning to just do a review of some kind about landmark events in Nigeria and beyond this morning on the program. As expected, we also will take time to look at the papers for you, see some of the big stories that are popping up across the news dailies this morning. Recalling too that the president 2 days ago had left Nigeria for the United Arab Emirates, where he's attending the COP28 climate summit. So much of discussion, so many conversations around climate change and the environment, what we can do to cut down on emissions, what industrialized nations in particular are expected to bring to the table in light of this conversation, and what countries like Nigeria that are fighting tooth and nail to lift their heads above the water can also do differently to better the fortunes of the world in the area of the environment, especially now that the impact of climate change has never been more visible. We'll take a quick break, everyone. When we return, it will be Papers Review. Let's turn to the papers quickly. Incidentally, we're going to begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. It's the Punch saying just above the nameplate with 3 headlines. CBN fund, Senate threatens to order gas companies probe. Shaibu free to contest Edo governorship, says Obaseki. But the governor has also said that it is the leadership of the PDP that will determine the fate of the deputy governor, because as it stands today, it's already very clear that the governor has thrown his weight behind Aswe Ighodalo to succeed him, all else equal, come 2024. Right? FG pays 585 million naira fines, begins nationwide prisoners release. That's on good news. New wage begins April. FG votes 24 trillion naira for salaries. You can look that up. Big story on today's today's issue of the Punch newspaper. Labour FG begin talks. Current wage regime expires March ending, says Minister. FG laments fiscal deficits. Reps condemn high MDA's salaries demand ICPC. And then at the foot of it, you find a picture of President Tinubu sitting right opposite King Charles III. This is in Dubai with regards to COP28 climate summit. COP28, Tinubu meets King Charles. Nigeria others eye $261 billion fund. Jagba FG urges varsities to produce more doctors. Do we have the requisite environment to do that? Do we have the systems and the structures required for it? Kwara Monarch, 2 others bag life jail for kidnapping. Assembly drops suit against Ayedatiwa. ESCO embraces peace. Right, that's all on the Punch. But just to mention that my colleague Anthony Mamadou is on the show with me this morning. In a bit, you get to see him. But on those states is one big story. It's been so in the last couple of months, and we've talked to you about that severally here on the program and what the development has been like, including the intervention of President Bola Tinubu. Again, whether that intervention has actually solved the problem, whether it has resolved the, if you like, the conflict between the governor and his deputy is a different ballgame altogether. Just before we turn to our next paper, Tony, it's a pleasure to have you.
To be on Africa's Finance Breakfast Show.
Exactly. So I'm thinking off the top of my head, these are some of the big stories coming out of the papers this morning. Incidentally, virtually none of these stories here is new. It's just that they are developing, they keep evolving. Look at Ondo, for example. A few months ago, the governor of the state, Akeredolu, Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, had traveled abroad for medical treatments, and he returns to Nigeria. One would have thought, well, it was sound and healthy enough to return to office and then get going with governors in Ondo State. But that didn't happen, still hasn't happened. Instead, he went to Oyo, where he still is today. And we are clear on what the Constitution says in situations like this. However, what we have seen in that state in the last couple of months is a back and forth, bad blood between the governor and the deputy. We've seen how even the House of Assembly has been embroiled. In that battle, what does that say? For what you know about Ondo State and the problem.
I think it's very sad. First of all, we know Rotimi Akeredolu is someone with a legal background.
Very robust one of that.
Yeah, so we expect that he knows the doctrine of necessity, which says when a principal officer is out for so long due to ill health,
maybe even incapacitated, or God forbid, in the case of death,
not able to,
perform the role as required by the Constitution.
Yes, the governor, the deputy governor steps in without any force. So we saw it when Goodluck Jonathan's case also
with Lady Yaradua.
Though we had to push for it before he found. So it's very sad that also the president, who is supposed to lead by example, also had to read in and
try to prefer political solution of some kind. Was that an error too on the part of the president?
I think it's more than an error. It just shows you that from top to bottom, that we're not truly practicing democracy, but rather we practice what is convenient for us. Because if he was being just and fair, Ayedatiwa should be the acting governor now, not still, deputy governor. And that's meeting they had, that truce they had, was a forced truce. It wasn't a truce agreed by both parties, because as of 2 days back, we still hear the House of Assembly, led by Olajide, still having issues. Some faction is saying, let's pronounce him the acting governor, while others are saying, we cannot go against what the
So
APC,
they are not on the same page?
They are not on the same page. And it's very sad that even the majority leader, Emmanuel, is also involved in it. Some are saying, okay, we're going to stick with what Mr. President says, but nobody's saying what the Constitution says.
So we're pretending like the Constitution doesn't say a word about it.
So it remains to be seen if the deputy governor will be bold enough, alongside other lawmakers who are on his side, if they'll be bold enough to take that step and make that move, because that's what the Constitution demands of them to do. Right now, the interest of the Ondo people is not being put forward, and it's very, 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 very sad.
It's interesting, but we need to turn to the Vanguard for you, everyone, this morning. Let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. Has a big story right there on the front page of it. Says FG's MDAs now undertakers of businesses. That's according to MAN and NECA. Has about 5 riders underneath it. Laments rising inflation, multiplicity of taxes, threats of strikes, protests. Say Nigeria needs investments to create jobs. Lord organized businesses for resilience. People not interested in budgets, figures. If prices of bread, rice remain high, that's according to Rwani, a foremost economist. Adds, you can take news but can't take prosperity. Okay, that's on the Vanguard newspaper, but then we have a few more here. Says Supreme Court judgment, tension grips Nasarawa. Of course, we understand that a lot has been happening across states like Nasarawa, Kano, and of course, Plateau State. It appears Zamfara now has also fallen into that bracket. U.S. star diplomat Henry Kissinger dies at 100. I mean, if you have followed U.S. politics in the last several years, you would know the person of Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, who has redefined that role very radically. It's almost impossible to talk about the office of the Secretary of State of the U.S. Without having to wire in narratives around Henry Kissinger. Now we understand he has passed at the age of 100. 135 billion naira CBN intervention funds, Senate to unleash EFCC, ICPC on defaulters. Minister to Reps, education facing huge problems. It appears we're talking so much about these problems, especially as they have to do with education. I mean, my sense tells me that everybody knows that there's a problem there. In fact, most people also know what the specific problems are, especially the key stakeholders. Why is it so difficult to address these issues, especially when you look at the fact that even UNESCO has long ago recommended that budgets of nations should be such that at least 26% is allocated to education. You may say, well, UNESCO does not own Nigeria, but I think the lesson we should take away from that is UNESCO is telling us that, look, you've got to make a priority out of your education. Nigeria hasn't done that.
I think looking at the 24, 26%, allocation for education, it just tells you if you're a serious nation, education is the bedrock for development.
Right.
And so when you do not have that political will to give that allocation mark to education, it tells you something is amiss. And it just reminds you of technically what the leaders from the northern region have done over the years, seem not to put much in education for their people. And some political pundits will tell you it's because they're trying not to allow people to get more educated, so that they do not oppose their style of leadership. Because when the people are not educated, they don't know their left from their right. Looking at the joint government, it's sad because they don't do that because they know their kids, their family members go to the best schools, so they can afford to send them to the best schools. So they don't really care if the general public do not have access to very great education. So I think that's one of the reasons why, because if it was affecting them directly, if their children were going to those public schools that go on strike every now and then and do not have the required equipment to learn on the trees, they would do something. Most times, if you look at National Assembly lawmakers, they only cry foul when it affects them directly. Right. Ned Nwoko, in the past few weeks, only cried out about the one chance issue, which we we've been playing in this television studio because one of his aides was forcibly adopted recently in the FCT. So it tells you that always that selfish interest from our leaders, which is very sad.
Sad indeed, we should say. But let's see some stories from the Tribune. Hopefully we'll find some reprieve and consolation from there. Above the nameplate of the Nigeria Tribune this morning, one story there is, has its details on, let's see what page it is, page 30, has a picture of Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki. It says, Shaibu free to contest, but PDP members will decide Edo Guba candidates, of course. You want to talk about that real quick?
It's very funny, laughable for a governor to feel like he has the right to determine who has the right to vie for it.
But hasn't that become the culture and the practice in recent years?
But that's very wrong. Philip Shoaib, not like I'm saying he's a saint or he's the best candidate, but he has that right. The Constitution gives him that right.
And the governor has not denied him. The governor is saying that it's PDP members that will determine that. I mean, that's fair enough, isn't it?
No, that's not fair enough. He making that statement tells you indirectly he has some reservations. For Philip,
what more should he have done? In your perspective?
For me, stay silent. He didn't need to say whether he's free or not to.
But people are accusing the governor and saying that, look, you are the one behind the plight of the deputy governor.
His body language, the issues they've had in the past. Philip Shoaib had made comments, has insinuated in the past that it looks like the governor didn't like the idea of him wanting to run. And that tells you something else also. On the flip side, it tells you technically, Philip Shoaib is also not good enough, because if your principal
is bypassing you to pick someone else who's not even in politics,
or who feels like you're not good enough, despite serving him for 7+ years, it means there's something wrong. It means there's something about you he's not comfortable with. This same thing played out when Obasanjo and Atiku wanted to run. Obasanjo practically came out to ruin Atiku's chances by saying all the ills
and till today, Atiku Abubakar still has not won election.
So it tells you that it also tells you that, like they say, birds of the same feather flock together. So Obasanjo on the flip side also is not a good person. But if you're good, how would you have a bad deputy and stick with him that long?
On what basis did you pick him as your running mate?
Thank you. So same with Shaibu and Obaseki. So there's something wrong with both parties. So, and for the fact that he's saying the PDP will have to decide, obviously we know the power of incumbency. He's going to influence whatever the PDP members are going to say.
But let's bring a bit of perspective, Tony. As it stands today, Oshomole, who was the governor, the predecessor to Obaseki, was from Edo and North, which is one senatorial district. Of course, you have 3 senatorial districts. The current governor, Obaseki, is from Edo South. The argument is that justice and equity demand that it should go now to Edo Central, where you have the Esan people.
True.
And the governor is fully in endorsement. He says he's got to go to the Esan people. And that's why you now see Aswe Godalo being, if you like, advanced and being sold, yes, as the governor's favorite candidate. All of the governor's boys now have flooded Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Even up to this morning, I saw all of them doing their thing that they've always done and stuff like that, because they've got to work for their principal. But we also see now that some people are saying, no, we shouldn't run the state like that. Let the best man win, regardless of where they come from. But you see, politicians are very tricky with these things. Once it favors them, they say, well, since it has gone around to the 2 other senatorial districts, let it come to the Esan people now who are in the state's central. But where it doesn't favor them, they say, no. It's got to be about competence. It's got to be about being eligible. Let's not talk about where you're from and things like that. But is the governor not trying to bring fairness by saying let it go to those to whom it has not gone to?
I think if he wants to bring fairness, he should ensure that on the election day everything is free and fair. As INEC,
regardless of who emerges as the candidate.
Yes, let him allow the electorate. I'm from Esan Central, but I wouldn't say because of that I'm going to support it. Let the electorate decide by going to vote. So whoever they vote for,
there must be primaries. There must be primaries first before we determine all of that.
No, we're just putting it on the long run.
Okay. Beyond the internal politics.
Let it be. It should be the electorate deciding who governs them next. If it's Philip Shoaib, let him be the one. If it's Godalo, let him. So let the electorates decide.
So we leave that to Edo State electorate. By the way, we understand that INEC has scheduled that election for July of next year, because come 12th of November, Osadebe Avenue, which is the official government house in the state, must have a new governor, no later than 12 o'clock on the day. So fingers crossed, we'll continue to follow those developments for you here on Global Television. But we have a few more headlines just above the nameplate of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Reps NSE argue over concrete technology for road construction. We know how that has been with the Minister of Works, David Umahi, about whether to use concrete or use a few other options. And it has also been a bit of war, for want of better words, between him and contractors. Why are we having the politics of concrete?
I think it just tells you how funny the Nigerian state is. When Fashola was in charge, a lot of people made a lot of noise about him handling 3 different
ministries in one.
But you must give it to him, we barely heard any of these issues about which specific to use materials to use for making of it. And we saw him, go monitor these contractors, their job done. We saw roads being, commissioned. So we could say yes, he got the job done. But for Umahi, it's too early in the day for us to start having, and it boils down to who they give the contract to. I think that's where the issue is right now, because it's more like, okay,
so somebody's interest has been threatened?
Yes, so definitely that's why there's a lot of issues as regards, do we use concrete, how much? So you'll be surprised somewhere along the lines, these same people are going to start telling you that the concrete was the best thing that ever happened to Nigeria once their interest has been served. So I think that's where the major issue is, not really whether now they're not talking about which roads are going to be, fixed or which part of the country.
So it's about what material we should use. And again, we know how funding comes into that
because that's where the money is now. So that's why there's
everybody is fighting tooth and nail.
Because if they were fighting, okay, bring it to the south, bring it to the north, then we know, okay, it's the interest of the people they're looking at, but now it's the material. So this part, is it going to be imported? We remember at a point there was a minister who told us they had to import certain things to Nigeria, agriculture minister.
Right.
Yeah, so it just tells you it's all about the benefits.
Okay, let's find some benefits from some of these headlines on the Nigerian Tribune this morning, still above the nameplates. With details on page 3, Ayedatiwa presides over Ondo Exco meeting. All political issues resolved. The government's assembly withdraws case against deputy governor. All right, but then we have one here that says 2024 budget, reps call for fiscal responsibility, public service reform. You know we have, Tony, by the way, the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Yet, as a country, for the most part, over time, we have not acted responsibly where funding or where fund is concerned. Now, the reps is saying that ministries should be fiscally responsible. They're talking about public service reforms and all that. Yet Nigerians cry almost every other day over the National Assembly, whether it's a Senate today or House of Representatives tomorrow, because they're either renovating for 38 billion today or they are purchasing SUVs for 60 billion or whatever amount the next day. It appears we've not been able to get our priorities straight, because I recall that in Edo State, for example, in 2016, in fact, between 2013 and 2014 in particular, there were people who faulted the former governor, Adams Oshomole. They said, look, you keep telling us you can't pay this, you can't pay that, you can't do this, you can't do that. But you're flying helicopter from Benin to Abuja every other time. How do you do that? Now, their argument is simple. They are saying that if a state is actually troubled financially, if a state is in a bad place financially, it has got to reflect in the lifestyle of the chief executive of that state, who in this case happens to be the governor. So it's almost as if the governor is talking from two sides of the mouth. I mean, that's their argument in that kind of situation. Now, narrow it down to this situation where reps are now calling for, reforms in public service and talking about being fiscally responsible. Are members of the National Assembly, upper and lower chambers, fiscally responsible?
The answer is straightforward. They are not responsible. Not to put them down, but they're not responsible based on...
Fiscally responsible?
Based on the purchases, procurement they're doing. And you're buying SUVs, they'll tell you because the roads are bad to their respective homelands. So the roads are bad. What have you done to make these roads better? And if you're buying SUVs because you feel the roads are bad and because you feel it's safer for you, what about the ordinary Nigerian that doesn't have an SUV? How do they ply those roads? Okay, and we talk about the inflation rate in the country, the economic hardship in the country,
right.
But you're still making high purchases. there's lots of travelings by the president and the number of people that travel. Remember what the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, did during his time as a governor, and the fact that he always made sure he doesn't go with litany of aides when he's traveling, because he says, okay, I'm going for the meeting, not you, so I don't need to go with 50 people, 50 cars. But these governors, this House of Rep members, we know what happens when they're on the way. The number of policemen that go with them also shortens the protection for the average normal Nigerian citizens. So I think if there's anybody who should be fiscally responsible, it should be the lawmakers. They should lead by example. They're not leading by example. Even when we see the hike in fare prices, we don't see them say, okay, in solidarity with the Nigerian people, we're not going to see it, we're going to do this so that the prices drop. No, they don't, because they do not care.
That's a sad narrative, but it is the reality Nigerians have to grapple with every day, quite frankly. 80% surge in food importation, alarming. That's FG talking. All right, 88.5 million Nigerians threatened with insufficient food consumption. Food inflation stood at 31.52% in October. Says Nigeria has highest rates of stunted children globally. Explains is being done to reverse. What's to reverse? Okay. And then let's see other stories for you. It says here 135 billion naira gas intervention project. Senators kick as CBN, Petroleum Ministry trade blame. Makinde presents new Ashei staff of office December 14. But then we need to take a look again at the Guardian newspaper. All right, let's see what we have. It says International Day amid a ravaging scourge. HIV cure vaccine still elusive 42 years on. By the way, today is UN Day for AIDS, right? World AIDS Day, that's what it's called, we understand. Excuse me, several events have been planned across this country and, of course, on a global scale. Here in Abuja, there will be some kind of walk, like street walk, road walk, and then, of course, several events. However, HIV/AIDS have been here for a long time, and then we've tried to find a way to mitigate the impact. We've tried to see how we could continue to push advocacy, all right, intensify awareness, make investment in several areas. But again, there have been questions as to whether or not we have properly managed this scourge, especially when you look at international involvement in its intervention initiatives, including those by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Of course, we understand that Bill Gates has been in this country again and again and again, putting so much money into initiatives focused on items like malaria, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and so on and so forth. We have seen people also whip up allegations of corruption by those who manage these processes and all of that. Today, again, is World AIDS Day. Beyond the commemoration and all of the English you have to speak, read papers, go to some of the best hotel and event centers, to put up events, have we been winning the war? Because it doesn't appear we're hearing so much about AIDS.
I think that's where the problem is. The media, alongside even the health professionals, seem every time there's a new disease or epidemic that comes out,
it overshadows whatever we were doing before then.
Right now, most people, and it's in the health sector, one key thing is whatever brings in money for the drug manufacturers, for the health professionals.
The big pharma, as they call it.
That's where the focus is.
Right.
That's why, of recent, what of interest to the world is COVID-19,
right?
Because that's where the money is. That's where the big countries, the G20 countries, donate lots of funds to. And because of that, the health professionals are more interested in health facilities, are more interested in that disease. That's why it looks like the HIV and AIDS has lost steam. And because before now we saw that constant it being on the news by TV houses, media houses, scaling up, telling us how many number of people affected in the 6 geopolitical zones, and those that have, gotten the treatment, those that are alive, But now is more of the COVID-19 and other new upcoming epidemics that have been focused on. And I think
including diphtheria.
Diphtheria is the new one, and now we also have the defecation, open defecation.
That's right.
That the funds are also there. Then now we have climate change which is the biggest market right now. We're talking about the COP28 now, where African countries are looking at $261 billion. So that's where the whole African countries.
So everybody is coming to see how they can get a chunk of that.
So that's where their interest is now. So the HIV and AIDS has lost steam. Remember NACA? NACA used to be one of the finest
national agency for control of AIDS.
Everybody wants to even get a job there, wants to work there. But right now, it's more of the COVID-19.
You know, somebody mentioned, by the way, Tony, just to add to what you've said, I mean, quite a brilliant point there, that after, Professor Shoshi May, blessed memory, who later moved on to lead UNICEF. You know, I mean, when he was the DG of NACA under former President Obasanjo, that it was more of what NACA should be like. But today it appears that, to use your word, the steam again has abated. And then just pretty much like what you had with NAFDAC under former Professor Dora Akunyili. And today, people are questioning whether NAFDAC still has teeth or not. Some say, well, it may have teeth, but they're not sure whether it can bite. But what's the difference, really?
Definitely, for NAFDAC, I think it only bites when there's a big company coming into Nigeria and they've got a produce they're bringing in. That's when NAFDAC seem to bite. They call out to say, okay, if this company hasn't gotten signed up by NAFDAC, it doesn't
so
sell.
You've got to do the paperwork and get accredited.
Yeah. So once it's a big company and they know this is big business, you hear NAFDAC in the news. So, but when it's just the companies within Nigeria, you don't really hear them make a move or clamp down on people defaulting within the country. Except
I can imagine.
We've got foreign companies coming in.
Let's take a few more. Take a look at a few more headlines from this morning's Guardian newspaper. By the way, we have a report coming up in the course of discussion this morning that focuses on the one chance phenomenon. We'll talk to you about that shortly. But let's see these headlines that say Nigeria missing as HIV prevention product for women arrives. 11 African nations. That's a sad story. Nigeria missing as HIV prevention product for women arrives 11 African nations. Okay. Lagos Assembly takes inventory of failed state roads. That's on page 26. 135 billion naira intervention funds. Senate may alert anti-graft agencies on recovery. UN leaders call for action, higher ambition as COP28 opens in Dubai. Arabs knock oil operators over letdown of host communities. Read details for yourself when you pick up a copy of today's Guardian newspaper on page 27. National Assembly begins debate on 2024 budget despite debt servicing concerns. Those are things we also need to address as quickly as possible. Tony, Nigeria is a country that has carved, if you like, a reputation for itself in the area of borrowing. And now a debate has started on the 2024 budget, in spite of the fact that there's all lots of gap regarding debt servicing. I mean, again, it brings us to one thing: we have to keep borrowing. In 2018, a former Minister of Finance has said, look, Nigeria will continue to borrow for the foreseeable future. And that's exactly where we are now. This is 7 years down the line.
It makes you wonder what the Debt Management Office, what their role is.
The DMO, right?
Yes. Is it just to let us raise alarm every time we borrow, then keep quiet? What are they doing to
halt further borrowing?
To make it make it impossible for the government to borrow. And the National Assembly on their own part not also helping matters, because every time the presidency brings forth a proposal to borrow, there's no attempt to stop it, to probe deeper into it. Do we necessarily need to borrow? The only thing you hear them say is, okay, the interest rate is not in double digits, and so it's okay, which is very, very, very sad. Now we're not just borrowing from the World Bank, because for the World Bank, we're perpetual the World Bank, we have the AFDB, that's African Development Bank.
Then the IMF.
And I think, I don't know if it's now a curse or a blessing for Nigeria that we have our own additional there, because it has made it much easier for Nigeria to dip its hands and always borrow from the AFDB. And I think it's worrisome, how often we now borrow. It's becoming a lifestyle. The leaders are not trying to think outside the box to see how we can generate revenue rather than borrowing, and that makes it very, very painful, because it means the future of Nigeria has technically been mortgaged, because it means lots of work for future leaders, our born kids, to do for them to be able to pay off all these loans. And we know how these finances go. Years from now, the interest rate is going to triple, and what's the guarantee that Nigeria would be able to pay up and not turn into Somalia? Because that's what's going to be the end point. When you can't pay, there's going to be restiveness, and before you know, law and order breaks down, and
civil unrest.
And you know what that's going to mean for the country.
Right. You know, it's interesting, because you look at Nigeria today, you see, like you said, the way we borrow and how we borrow irresponsibly. We recall that some years ago, we were even borrowing, and I hope that has changed for the better now, to pay salaries, particularly under former President Muhammadu Buhari. We borrowed to pay salaries, and for a country, that was a huge shame.
Yeah, but the sad part is not just borrowing to pay salaries. We borrow to pay salaries, but were the salaries paid? No, because we know.
So who are we holding accountable for how those monies were spent?
Definitely the state governments, because for instance, we know that of Plateau, we know that of Kogi, these two, and Benue, these states, we know that there
highly indebted states.
Cry by civil servants.
With labor crisis back and forth.
Never paid salaries, but they also collected money. And that was where the Paris reform issue came about. The fact that, yes, we gave you this money, did you pay?
Just to give you a lifeline.
You didn't. So what did you do with the money? Not forgetting that these state governments still have the security votes they get every month. So what are they doing with this money?
Which they are not accountable for.
And so it tells you that's why they were so irresponsible for some of them to come out to say, I want to become the president of Nigeria, when you have not paid salaries in your states. And you have the guts to want to become president of the country. So that's because they have too much money to play around with.
Incidentally, nothing is further from the truth. But a few more headlines for you on The Guardian this morning. Reps knock oil operators over letdown of host communities. We brought you that earlier. But then let's turn quickly to Daily Trust before we bring you our report on One Chance criminality this morning. On the Daily Trust, right beneath the nameplate says 9 months after Lagos Airport's international runway remains closed. Nigerian nurse in UK sacked, deported over prayer for dying patient. I mean, I saw this story yesterday. Whether to laugh or to be angry, I mean, I had mixed feelings about it. This is a nurse who has been sacked and then, of course, deported, not because she's said to be unprofessional or that she has committed.
I think she has.
Because she was praying.
I think she has, because as a professional, it's just like you're supposed to go on air, and rather than going, you're praying for the show not to fail, rather than going on air. So rather than attend to the patient to get well or save their life, you're praying. I'm not saying praying is a bad thing, but...
So is the right action under the wrong circumstances?
So that's what she did. And one thing, we're not in Nigeria. In Nigeria, that could slide because we have this religious thing about us. But over there, what you expected to do is what you to do.
Yes.
So I think she got it wrong.
You were not hired to pray. You were hired to be a nurse.
Medical attention. So if you're not giving that medical attention, then you've done something wrong, and a life has been lost. I think she's even lucky that she wasn't sent to jail. Rather, she was deported. And probably she had been given previous warnings as regards that
this practice. Yes. Quite a sad one there. Villagers flee as soldiers leave Kaduna community. That's again something that has to do with insecurity. Apparently, Kaduna State has been a flashpoint in recent years, and that's quite a sad one. That also affected the immediate past governor of the state, Nasir El-Rufai, because they said, look, we are not comfortable with you being president. I mean, if you were able to run, for example, neither are we comfortable having you within the government of President Bola Tinubu. And of course, we are all aware of the damning security reports.
I think he did himself in, he shot himself on the foot, because when those crises began, when he took charge of Kaduna State, at a point it looked like the people of Kaduna kept saying he always turned the other way.
A blind eye to...
Because it was affecting southern Kaduna, where it was like mostly Christian-dominated region. And even when he spread to other parts of the state, he kept always not, he was economical with the truth. to the fact that insecurity was really ravaging his people.
Right.
We had Samuel Arwan, who was his media man, always coming out to his defense.
In his defense,
always, if 100 people were killed, they'll come and say 20 or 10. Always playing down that insecurity that was engulfing Kaduna State. And I think that's why the insecurity in Kaduna has gotten worse. Because even the new governor, Sani Ubani, also, I think he's also not getting the job done. It seems that they've lost an idea how to tackle it.
Is it not too early to call it, to assess?
In every week we tend to hear a news about certain communities sacked in Kaduna, especially those Giwa access. There's always that. So why is it not being resolved? Since you already know the areas where they seem to always attack. Another thing you look at is the fact that Kaduna is really very big. It's a very big landmass, so it probably makes it very difficult for the number of security operatives in that state
to have coverage.
So I think more needs to be done. I think they need to probably call a state of emergency for the federal government to really support Kaduna, to save Kaduna, because Kaduna is a very pivotal state, not just in the northern region, but for the country as a whole.
Right. Then that brings us to the star story on the front page of Daily Trust this morning. How to get 2024 budget right, according to economists, says a proposal low compared to South Africa, Ghana, others, LCCI. Nigerians not interested in figures, but as Rwanda there talking, senators, reps consider Tinubu's 27.5 trillion naira budget without details. Is this a rubber stamp attribute?
Yeah, it is. That's one. Secondly, don't be surprised that after this, we're going to see probably when it's finally passed or agreed, it's going to be padded. Because even when Bagudu there was a statement that said they were still looking at the one approved by the Senate already, or to be approved by the Senate already. So the question is, are you saying what you've given is not the final output? So you're expecting something on top of it.
So you deliberately left loose ends.
Yes. So there's that lacuna, that loophole for something to be done. So for the Senate to also want to pass it without hitches, indirectly what it means is that when we do ours, there shouldn't be any...
So it's some sort of quid pro quo.
So it just tells you, and obviously you can tell when the president went to make his presentation before the two houses, you could see it was easy ride. And but what we see in other clients, like the U.S. for instance, the Democrats and the Republicans wouldn't let you slide that easy.
Right.
There's going to be questions to be asked about certain issues, but like we already know in Nigeria, there's no ideology between both parties, the APC or the PDP.
So maybe the difference would just be the colors of their flags and their logos.
And the interest. Once their interest is served, like this looks already, then it's a carry go, like we say in Nigeria.
Okay, Navy arrests two ship's crew for illegal fishing. The story has details on page 52. 1,001 students on Kano State Government's foreign scholarship departing to their respective destinations. You find those pictures on the front page of the Daily Trust. And that's where we're going to take a quick break on the papers this morning. We'll still have a few more to look at for you. But just to remind you that we have a responsibility as a people to be vigilant, security conscious, especially for those who live in the Federal Capital Territory, that's in Abuja, because of how we have seen some evolution in the way crimes are being committed across the city. Of course, it's obvious that it's pretty much the same situation in different cities across the nation. While we hear that, yes, security agencies are doing their utmost in this situation to ensure that they surmount this challenge, these criminals are still on the loose, doing what they know how to do best, to attack innocent citizens and cause them untold hardship and pain. Our partner correspondent, Abdullahi, did something very brilliant with this report, which we now bring to you.
An apparently peaceful traffic situation can turn into a nightmarish experience with the activities of the popular but ignoble criminals called One Chance. They are violent criminals who disguise as either commercial drivers or as passengers. The trick is to shout, one chance, giving the impression that the vehicle needs only one passenger to move. But jump in and you jump into a pile of miseries. Kabiru Adamu is a security consultant and confirms that this pattern of crime has taken an alarming dimension.
It is a common occurrence in most city centers. In Abuja, as an example, it's very difficult for you to go to any space where there are a couple of persons ranging from 3 up until 10 that you will not find at least 1 to 2 to 3 persons that have not been victims of one chance, as long as the persons are using commercial vehicles.
So I entered the cab hailing Pape.
Chidinma is a young mother. She had a terrible and pathetic experience in the hands of the criminals.
Chidinma was dropped by her sister right about here at around 8 o'clock in the evening. A Mazda car driven by a man and one other passenger at the back pulled over and hastily picked her. Destination Mbappe. But the journey was doomed because a set of horrible things started happening at the inception of the trip.
Merely I entered, the passenger by my left was behaving as if he was collecting his balance from the driver. So I felt comfortable. I guess they did that so that I wouldn't have to notice what was going to go on. So immediately after he collected that balance, the next thing he did was to stretch his hands towards my side, and here was on my neck, while here was trying to stop me from opening the door by my right. So as I tried to open the door by my right, they were shouting, you better cooperate. You know, go cooperate, but you won't die. You won't die this night. She said, go feel come out from this car. This is go feel come out. You know, go feel come out from this car. They were beating me. The first person that hit me was the man in front. So he punched me with, I don't know whether it was a ring on his finger or a rod. Mainly he punched me. That was when here, the blood started oozing from here. So I was in the pool drinking my blood. Then they now told me, lie down. Okay, lie down. No, go lie down, ba. So I was struggling. They've collected my stuffs. They've collected my bags at that time. I didn't have my bag with me. So they were telling me, no, go lie down, ba. So I thought they wanted to rape me as they were telling me to lie down on the floor of the car. So as I tried to lie down on that floor, the one by my side too now slapped me, and he tried to strangle me too. That was where this marks came out from. So he was strangling me and was telling me, no, you go die this night. Maybe you don't want to cooperate. You go die this night. You go die this night.
Chidinma was lucky to escape alive because she did not fit the correct profile of the perfect victim the criminals were searching for their sinister intentions.
By the time they were done beating me, it wasn't like the madam, you know what you go do now? You go cut your breast. I said, okay, sir. He now said, do you have kids? I said, yes, I have kids. He just kept quiet. The next thing I saw was that he told me, okay, oh yeah, get up.
Alone in the night.
This young lady was also lucky because she survived and agreed to share her experience with us.
I've been attacked in this beggar before. I was hit from behind. My phones and everything were collected. And it took me years to be able to stand in beggar and get a car and pick up a cab.
In a daring display of impunity, most of the criminals move around with POS machines for ease of stealing money out of the bank accounts of their victims. Security experts explain that this is very possible, especially with the emergence of new financial outfits who ignore the vigorous security check on customers before opening customer accounts.
A lot of the instances that we've monitored, they actually use the financial systems. Now, the reason for this is commonplace. Number one, we do not have a national database for individuals, Nigerians actually. And more importantly, even the banking system has not put in place infrastructure to reduce the possibility of this from happening, and then secondly, where it happens, to trace the perpetrators, arrest them, and then prevent further crime.
Abuja is Nigeria's seat of government. It is also a bubbling cosmopolitan city that attracts people from every part of Nigeria and even abroad who come mostly in search of economic opportunities. But like many emerging cities facing the challenges of growth, crime has become a major issue. The June 2023 edition of Nigeria Security Report for Beacon Intel, a security consulting firm, shows an increase in crime in not just Abuja, but other major Nigerian cities. The FCT Police Command says it is doing its best to fight crime in the territory in order to protect the security and welfare of citizens.
We have created a tactical squad called Anti-One Chance, which are, they have been charged with the responsibility of these one chance activities to wipe away, in conjunction with the DPOs as well. The DPOs are doing on the divisional level, and this squad that I mentioned, Anti-One Chance, has been deployed also to each division.
The FCT Police Public Relations Officer says the police needs the cooperation of the victims and other citizens in order to tackle this despicable crime called One Chance.
Sometimes these modus, they change their modus. Though we've identified the modus they are using, but when they know we identify them, they also change their modus. So when if you find yourself as a victim, it's only wise and advisable that you report these incidences to the security agencies.
I actually did not believe that they could do anything about it. That was why I didn't report to them.
Our law enforcement agents that do not see this crime as a major crime. We've been in instances where we've monitored this development on behalf of our clients. We report the cases by providing the telephone numbers that were used in the crime, the account numbers that were used in the crime. The response you get from the law enforcement is that they have bigger challenges. And this is the effort they will use in stopping this is not what the benefit.
Victims survive and injuries are treated, but the emotional scar takes a very long time to heal.
It took me months, or if not years, to actually recover. And psychologically, everything around me now, even if I enter a cab now, I will start to be conscious of where I am because of everybody around me is a suspect.
The one that was repeatedly beating me, I didn't see the one in the front, his face, but the one at the back, I kind of saw his face. So when I see someone that looks like that person, I'll be like, are you sure it's not this man that beat me that night?
Kabiru Adamu says commuters should avoid flagging vehicles along the road. Instead, approved and designated motor parks should be used. Anjum Abdullahi.
Thank you, Danjuma Abdullahi, for that eye-opening reporting right there. Tony and I are still taking a look at the papers as we begin to wind down on the program this morning. Let's turn to the Nation newspaper for you with the big story that says how federal government will tackle budget 2024 deficits by Edu. That's obviously coming from the Minister of Finance, who doubles as coordinating minister of the economy, has 3 riders saying measures will crash shortfall from 6.11% to 3.88% of GDP. Senate House begin debates on 27.5 trillion naira estimates. Budget's brilliant, says Senator Jimo Ibrahim. Ayedatiwa Ondo House closed ranks. ESCO adopts Abuja peace terms. House withdraws suit against Deputy Governor. Workers to get 35,000 naira. And then it just makes you wonder, what are the terms of that so-called Abuja peace terms? I mean, again,
I think the top of it is for status quo to remain. He remains deputy.
Yeah, exactly.
And Akeredolu remains the governor.
Governor in absentia, as it is now, practically.
Because the president made a statement to say why is Ayedatiwa so hell-bent on becoming acting governor? Why can't he just remain deputy and
Exactly.
still serve the people. If he really wants to serve the people, he can still serve the people as deputy. So it just tells you the selfish mindset of Mr. President and Akeredolu, because if the doctrine of necessity says he steps aside for Ayedatiwa to take charge, why would that be?
Interesting. I know the thing that bothers me really as a Nigerian, Tony, is the fact that, I mean, this is also a president that has some of the finest lawyers around him, whether it's the AGF, for example, or those other senior lawyers with robust backgrounds.
Those lawyers are bootlickers.
Yes, and then you're wondering, whatever happened to being thorough, I mean, being a thoroughbred professional, whatever happened to being patriotic? I mean, all of these elements don't come to play, because I understand that in an ideal situation, even though, of course, it's obvious now that what we have is not an ideal, or even close to it, those who are appointed by the president, especially at this point, I mean, at this level of having advisory role to play, should first and foremost be loyal to the Constitution, just like they say in the military. You're loyal to the flag, not to one man here or one man there. But again, Nigeria is always a different case on issues like this.
In Nigeria, there's this level of psychophancy, and I think it started from the civil service, where your boss wants you to be yes sir, yes sir. If you there oppose him or even suggest an idea that is in variance with his, he sees you as being insubordinate. And I think that's where the problem is. For instance, we had the CJN Justice Ariola come out to say that as long as the judiciary does not have physical autonomy, they would not be able to get rulings that are independent and fearless, regardless of who is involved. So what it simply tells you is because they want favors from the other arms of government.
The executive and maybe the legislature.
Give judgment that would favor the...
To the detriment of the country and the legal and judicial system.
Obviously. And what happened in Abba Yusuf's case in Kano is a typical example of what's playing out. And for the president to have made that statement, for me, I think it's really sad. And for someone like his media publicity person in Galilee, who I thought should know better or come out with some statements every time the president goofs like he did. I'm surprised he remained silent on that.
But if he had said something to the contrary, Nigerians, perhaps including yourself, probably still would have accused him of being biased or selling fake news.
No, if he would have done damage control, because that statement by Mr. President wasn't it. You don't say, there's a law that says when a sitting governor or a president cannot perform his
then you trigger the doctrine of necessity.
So why would you now tell him, why is he so hell-bent? It's like you're cowering that you are. So what it means...
So you're making it the deputy governor's problem, forgetting that there's a constitutional provision.
Yes, so it's not about the constitution anymore. You're putting the constitution aside. Such a person, when he comes or when he becomes a governor, you can imagine what he's going to do when he gets to his turn.
Right.
Because right now what he's doing is, if he's good enough or if he's obedient enough to follow suit, he's going to keep that animosity in him. Just like what we're seeing about playing out in Edo State between Philip Shaibu
and
Obaseki.
Interesting, but let's take a look at stories above the name master of the Nation newspaper this morning. Lagos Abuja demolitions, Ohaneze, Keyes. Why? We follow rule of law. Of course, that's the FCC authorities are talking. Edo PDP governorship primary process in shaky start. FEMA needs 300 billion naira annually to fix federal roads. Abiodun presents 703 billion naira budget 2024 estimates. Okay, then what's more? Let's see at the bottom of it. It says, just to the right corner of the front page, Nigeria, UK strengthening ties. Tinubu, King Charles III meets. Yes, Nigeria is just like other countries of the world, interested in a piece of the $261 billion climate fund cake, as I'd like to call it on the program this morning. But we have just two more papers to look at, but let's turn to the blueprint for you. The blueprint newspaper this morning says Ohaneze applauds Tinubu's decision to release Kanu. That's on page 8. Nigerians will enjoy improved power supply soon. That's according to the federal government. Transmission, distribution, greatest obstacles. Pecan, they're talking. We're taking a push for restructuring to Tinubu Afenifere on page 13. 80% surge in food importation, alarming. Federal government there also expressing concern, says 88.5 million Nigerians faced with insufficient food. You can read it up on page 9 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning. My wife bullies me, divorce-seeking Martels Oyo courts on page 18. I mean, this is a bit of an intrigue because it's coming in the middle of the UN's 16 days of activism for the abolition or elimination of violence against women and girls. And this is a man here who says his wife...
at times, I think the world goes with a certain narrative and it continues for a lifetime.
And then over time, people buy into it wholesale.
Yes, and not looking at the reality on ground. There are lots of men who also face violence from their wives. And violence doesn't necessarily mean physical violence. The words you say to a man, which is even more damaging, psychologically, it makes you feel like you're not good enough. And that's certain...
and we have men across the world today dealing with such situations.
Yeah, that's why you see lots of suicide attempts, people dying before the, high blood pressure and all that. But it's just that the world has this narrative, a man is stronger than a woman. And so because of that, they feel whatever the woman dishes out to a man,
you should take it in his strides after you're a man.
Yeah. So I think there's need for change of narrative. There's need for, and this is where the healthcare professionals, the mental health doctors and professionals should come and play up this side of that divide in order to save lives. Because a lot of these issues happen on a daily basis, but it's not giving that needed publicity like on the other way around.
So we should shine a brighter light on it. Yeah. Excellent. But let's go to the foot of this morning's Blueprint newspaper now, where we have a few more headlines. No student killed in Abuja school, says NSCDC. 27.5 trillion naira 2024 budget realistic, says Senate. What are the basis for that conclusion? Well, you can find out on page 18 of the Blueprint newspaper. Kidnapping. Kwara court sentences Sirkin Fulani, 2 others to life in prison. COP28 opens in Dubai. Leaders urge speedy action against the rising climate crisis. Tinubu meets King Charles III, seeks stronger Nigeria-UK partnership. All right, that sounds like a great idea, but let's go wind it down altogether, looking at our last paper this morning, the New Telegraph. Above the nameplates, a headline there, it says CBN, FG recorded 816.53 billion naira fiscal deficits in July. Nigeria's 27.5 trillion naira budget threatened as OPEC plus mouths output cuts. Of course, at that level, you're talking about the politics of oil, all right? Not just OPEC, but OPEC plus. Okay, FAN bans use of Ghana must go sacks. That's for airlines now, says the damage conveyor belts. FAN bans use of Ghana must go sacks, all right? So for those of you who fly, packing your stuff in Ghana must go bags, the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAN, has now placed a ban on it. A fresh crisis in Edo PDP as faction boycotts SEC meeting. You find those details on pages 4 and 26 of the New Telegraph newspaper. My relationship with my deputy, cordial Obaseki. Well, the governor should also realize that people have eyes, they have ears, more importantly, they have a brain. Okay, we'll leave it at that. First Track Town demolition, court issues restraining order against Federal Housing Authority, LSBCA, Ohaneze, to establish relief agency on pages 2 and 28 of the New Telegraph this morning. And then the big story, no ex-governor with corruption cases will escape probe. EFCC, they're talking with Ryder, says its core mandate remains Senate to involve anti-graft body in CBN 250 billion naira gas funds probe. Why are appointed millionaires as council chairman by Governor Oti? State of the nation, PDP governors meet, seek ways to reduce Nigerians' sufferings. Okay, widening gap between rich, poor, pushing people into criminality. This is an interesting read. I mean, must be an interesting read when you say State of the nation, PDP governors meet, seek ways to reduce Nigerian sufferings. Because for the most part, what we hear about opposition parties in Nigeria, which the PDP now is, at least at the federal level, is how to recapture power. Therefore, when you now say such a party is meeting with the aim of seeing how to reduce the suffering of citizens, that's a bit of a bewilderment, isn't it?
I think it's just for the PR, because you look at how they're going to do that. They're not in power, and when they were in power, did they do that? No. So how are they going to do this? Is it like, are they saying they're going to work in tandem with the ruling party, APC, to help Nigeria?
But that's a possibility. After all, Wike, former governor of Rivers, as a member of the PDP, he tells us, yet is a minister in this country, under your very nose.
We know that was for a personal, for his own personal good, because...
but he says it's in the interest of the nation.
Well, that's what you expect him to say. But looking at what we've seen over time, and even with the policies in the FCT, can we safely say, okay, his policies thus far has impacted on the lives of Nigerians? Because for those in the FCT, one key thing we're suffering is the insecurity in the FCT. What move has he made for us to see, like, yes, they're working towards saving the lives and property of those in the FCT? Rather, what we see most is land revocation of lands, calling out for landowners. And we see things that would fetch them money rather than things that will, impact the life of Nigerians. He had to take the National Assembly to call him to look into the issue of the CCTV cameras across the FCT. Ordinarily, you would have thought if he had the interest of people and he knows one chance was something the FCT was suffering, he should be the one to take that initiative rather than being told to do it.
Excellent, excellent. But then we have just a few more headlines to wrap it up this morning. Nigeria scales through global EITI assessment with 72 points. A 2024 budget proposal, LCCI faults FG's oil prices, exchange rates assumption. Senate's presumptions realistic to pass for second reading today. We keep an eye out on that for you. Stay at home. Southeasterners not known for laxity, indolence. Governor of Enugu State is the one saying that. Says investors now ready for business in Enugu. Spending more time in nature improves productivity. That's according to some study. But then you can read of that story on page 26 of today's New Telegraph. Let's take it back to the top of the front page. A picture of, let's see there, Chief Iwayahu says, Festac town demolition, courts issues restraining orders. Shows to focus on his health. Of course, that's a no-brainer. You have to be alive to do gigs, do events, and so on and so forth. So, Tony, as we begin to wrap up now, let's look at some of the big events we've seen so far, as we will be doing in the days ahead into the end of the year. I mean, we've seen the president travel time and again out of this country. For the most part, every time he jets out, we're told by his aides, especially his special advisor on media and publicity in the person of Ajiri Ngelale, that the core of, his objective is to attract foreign direct investment. Some people say, well, we have not seen any of that happen yet. We've heard about some $14 billion and so on and so forth coming into the country. We heard about the visa ban that has been lifted. That's from the authorities of the United Arab Emirates and all that, because the president did branch off in UAE on his way from France the other time. In all, is it too early to criticize? Is it too early to feel disappointed?
Well, I think both ways you can, it depends on which divide you are. If you're for the government, you say it's too early to judge. If you're not for the government, you might say, or if you're neutral, you might say, okay, it's time to start judging, because like they say in Africa, if something's going to be good, it's in the morning you get to know. Let's look at all the travels he has made. Like you rightly pointed out, we are yet to see that massive influx of foreign direct investment into the country based on the number of travels he has made thus far. On the other side, you say, we know these things are not rocket science, or they're not just snap of fingers and they happen. Probably it takes procedures for these investors, because they will definitely have to watch keenly, do background checks to see how safe Nigeria is. Is the ease of doing business true, or just lip service by the government of the day? That's another big issue. Then we look at the inflation rate in Nigeria. It has been always going up. So it means the indicators are not really that positive for foreign investors to want to come do business in Nigeria. All right, the latest travel is the COP28 already as of yesterday, which is ongoing. As of yesterday, the host country, UAE, had given $100 million. Germany had donated $100 million. Britain had donated $51 million. But sad enough, the US, who seem to be one of the champions of climate change, just donated $17.5 million.
One of the polluters.
Yes,
one of the leading polluters.
$17.5 million. Japan, $10 million. So it's now left to see how strategic and deep-footed Tinubu will be to be able to get the last chunk of these donations that have already come in now for the African countries and third world countries that have been affected. And Nigeria, as we know, is one of the most affected countries based on the oil exploration going on by the international oil companies. So Nigeria has a big say as regards why they need a large chunk of these monies that have been donated already. So this is going to be a good test for Tinubu and his team that went over there. Let's see what they're going to come back with in COP28. Then we might now begin to say, okay, yes, the travels are beginning to make sense. Look at the power sector. Yes, we've got some agreement with some German companies as regards coming to help our power sector. So for that, you give them...
Especially within transmission and distribution.
So you give them a pass mark, even though we are yet to see the lights fully coming. But let's give them now to January, they'll begin to see that. Another big talking point is the fuel issue. We're told our refineries will be up and kicking in this month of December. So it's going to be interesting to see. We know that usually during festive period, especially December period, there's always this fear queue, certain rising costs. So we're going to see if there's going to be a reduction, or if how this festive period is going to go. It's going to tell a big way to judge how well Tinubu has done in the first 100 plus 50 days in office, or 200 days in office, depending how your count goes.
Right. I mean, you look at the last few weeks, we've not heard about Labour federal government crisis, particularly after all of the Ebola battle.
So we could say, you know, usually the Labour comes this during festive period. Some say...
So are you saying that that could be in the horizon?
Their Christmas package, so they're going to be quiet. But whenever you see these things come up during festive period, there's this insinuation that probably they're asking the federal government to do something. So now that they're so quiet, obviously, does it mean there's no longer fear issue in Nigeria? Does it mean workers are no longer suffering in some states, not paid for months? So that's the question Labour has to answer. Is it because they have been settled, so they are all good, and so Nigerians can suffer as long as they want?
You just talked about the economy a while ago, and of course there's a direct correlation between whatever it is the Labour should be pushing, I mean ideally, and the state of the economy, which of course also reflects the state, the quality of life of the people. Yes, the federal government has talked about several things they would do with regards to the impact of removal of fuel subsidy and so on and so forth, all of the palliative measures that we put in place. Are we done something impressive in that regard so far?
I don't think we've done anything impressive. If you look at most states, when you see the quality of palliative packs given to the people, you weep. You look at it, it's not, we're not seeing bags of rice, we're seeing
nothing substantial.
Leather tied portions of rice.
Some kind of handouts.
And it's very sad that it's so sad that we've got even the National Assembly committees calling on the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs to come tell us how you spent X amount of money for feeding children in schools. And so it tells you that things are not really straightforward. So the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry has a lot to prove to Nigerians that indeed we heard the federal government say, okay, 150 million families, homes are going to be given X amount of money, 25,000 naira. We're yet to see that happening. No, we can't see people come out to say, yes, we've received this X amount of money. So where is the money?
Interesting. We will hope to find answers to that question in the days and weeks and months ahead. But in the meantime, as we close the program this morning, let's also look at areas around health.
Okay.
Real quick, because people have to be alive to do whatever it is they want to pursue.
Sure.
All right. How much we have seen happen. I mean, we interviewed the Minister of Health here a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about what the federal government is doing, particularly in the areas of, efforts to arrest disease outbreaks and so on and so forth, and how to stem this tide of Jackbar syndrome as it affects the healthcare sector. Did you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
I think it's very sad.
I mean, given the antecedents of the current Minister of Health.
That's what he's saying and what is happening are two different things. If we remember the Obasanjo era, the Good Luck era, where we had the Shopee program, I felt that program was very laudable. It's a program I felt should have been sustained rather than taken out, because fortunately, I was able to witness some of this conditional cash transfer given to these women who had to attend the antenatal care 4 stages. If you completed the 4th stage, you're giving that 25,000. You could see their husbands coming, taking them to the hospital, helping them because they wanted to achieve that aim. And there was this benefit when you give birth in a primary healthcare center rather than giving birth at home or a traditional birth attendant, because these were ways to slow down the infant mortality rate in Nigeria at that point. So that program was a very
So are you saying the progress has been eroded?
Yes, definitely, because that program, once Good Luck left, that program was killed. Rather, it was now transformed in another fashion, in another sector. It wasn't using at that point, we had health officials go to general hospitals, ensure that referrals were attended to, and that also made sure that those at the grassroots got quality healthcare services. The primary healthcare centers were updated. There were regular trainings for the primary healthcare givers. So it did a lot for healthcare at the grassroots level. But currently, that's not the case. Just 2 days back, we had a story coming from Lagos. And Lagos is the benchmark for most states in the country. Right. When you have LUTS, one of the top-notch...
the Lagos University Teaching Hospital.
When you had, I think 5 wards closed down with 150 beds.
Right. Not being attended to.
Because of brain drain. It tells you there's something really amiss with our healthcare sector.
I'm afraid, Anthony, it's a Friday. You know, they say a great weekend begins on a Friday. This narrative, as factual and as accurate as it is a very sad one for a country like Nigeria. Now, we're talking about the healthcare sector in 2023. I mean, we can do better as a country. I'd like to say thank you, by the way, because time will fail us to continue with all of this. Now, I'm speaking with my colleague, Anthony Mamodu, who's a senior anchor here at Global Television. We do hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Today we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.